Hi, welcome to the channel, Budget Audio Review and Upgrades, and today I'm going to just do something maybe slightly different. Just going to talk about terminology, these terms you hear about speakers. It does apply to other parts of the system, amplifier, receiver, CD player and all that kind of stuff, cartridges and all that, but mainly to do with the speakers maybe. Like these terminologies, it's quite a lot of different ones as well, but we're just going to stick with three for today. In the title is warm, neutral and bright. You know, what's meant by this terminology, like you know, how do I kind of perceive it, and how do other people perceive it, and how do you perceive it, and also leave a comment in the comments box, you know, which do you prefer. I was looking on the internet and it seems that a lot of stuff is kind of geared these days to kind of like a warm sounding item, you know, comfort, you know, give people comfort, so to speak. Though the you know, the audiophile list seems to want to like as natural as possible. That's, you know, it seems that way, everyone seems to go for that. They want a natural sounding amplifier, a natural sounding set of speakers, and everything in between. You know, all natural kind of thing, all, you know, CD player, all that, to get the natural sound as it left the actual recording studio, so to speak. I mean, these recording studios would try and get the sound, you know, depending, but you know, on the whole, would get the sound to be as natural as possible, so you can go home and play it on your units, your HiFi, your system, your separates, whatever, and you can adjust it to your particular taste. So you know, you kind of got a blank canvas there, like where everything's level, and you can do your own bass, treble if you've got them on your amplifiers, etc., or buy an amplifier and speakers that tend to lead towards warm, bright, or whatever you like. So if they've got a blank canvas, so to speak, you can do the tweaking yourself to exactly how you want it, rather than them doing it for you. So okay, yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about all three of them. So let's start off. Okay, so we're going to start off with a neutral sounding speaker. I'm going to come back at the end just to say about how you may be able to, you know, using the tone control, so to speak, adjust it to try and bring it up to a bright or bring it down to a warm sounding speaker. And also, if you're thinking of matching a bright, say, speaker with a bright amplifier, how that may affect the overall sound. Just a few tips, maybe, and ideas there that I'll bring in at the end of the video in the recap. Okay, neutral sounding speakers, pretty much, I think most people, and I perceive it, and maybe you should perceive it as, you know, what the terminology is. When someone's got in their review, I found this a neutral sounding speaker, it favours none of the frequencies, like right across the board, really. It's going to be very hard for one speaker to not favour anything right across the board, but it's going to be hardly anything in it, so to speak, where, you know, the bass is not, you know, kind of push forward in, you know, there's more bass, there's no more bass than there is mid-range, and there is high end, so to speak. Everything's level, like a blank canvas. So, you know, this is something that if you've got a neutral sounding set of speakers, you could kind of like tweak it out to you. I mean, if you like neutral, that's fine, you're going to leave it where it is, but you can tweak it. You've got quite a range there with your bass and treble, or your graphic equalizer, to do quite a few adjustments and alter that canvas to how you particularly like your music. Like I say, if you like it completely neutral, then obviously you won't be doing any adjustments at all, and you probably ain't got a bass and treble control on your amplifier anyway. Okay, yes, everything's balanced. Now, there's maybe a few drawbacks with these speakers that I found, and I think, you know, I've read a few people's thoughts on it as well, and other people find that they can sometimes be a bit flat and dull, these speakers, you know what I mean? Obviously depending on the music you're playing, but it can sound a bit flat and dull. You know, unexciting, not an exciting, you know, not exciting sound maybe for some people. Can be very relaxing, can be a nice relaxing sound. But, you know, it's going to have clarity in it because there's nothing interfering, like, because it's a neutral kind of sound, so it's going to have, you know, quite a bit of clarity, hopefully, like, depending obviously on the speaker itself and your amplifier and whatever. It can sound thin and weak, so this is the kind of perception. I mean, and I'm not saying it does all the time, but it can do, maybe. You know, just something maybe to bear in mind if you're getting a neutral set of speakers. It can you can kind of get that sometimes with some bits of music, and you know, if you're happy with that, you're going to maybe get that here and there, then maybe, you know, just something to think about, really, how a neutral sounding speaker may actually sound. Okay, now we're going to go on to a warm sounding speaker. Okay, a warm sounding speaker. Now, looking on the internet, I find out that this is probably one of the most popular, even though, like I say, all the audiophilists like to have a natural, pure sound, you know what I mean, flat across the board, so to speak, nothing favoured, no frequency favoured, so they like it as natural as possible, and that's what a lot of people strive for. But looking on the internet, the most common kind of sound given out is a warm sound, you know, make people feel cosy, nice, you know, it's nice to listen to kind of thing, and make them like happy, so to speak. So, you know, what would you describe as a warm sounding speaker? This is This is a speaker that's got more like, it sounds a bit deeper, it's got a deeper sound to it, a bit more bassy. It's kind of leaning towards the bassy kind of sound, the deeper kind of sound. And the eyes are not as high, they're rolled off the eyes, towards the top, they start rolling it off, and they're not as sharp maybe. So this would be a warmer sounding speaker. The lower frequency seems to be more present, like I say, and the eyes are like subdued, they're kind of subdued. Sounds more pleasant, can be a bit bassy and thumpy at times though, with that added bass, so to speak, that lower end added kind of thing. So it can be, depending on your amplifier and the music you're playing, can sound a bit thumpy and heavy at times. But it's kind of got this comforting richness, and some people may call musical kind of sounds, It all sounds very nice. There's no harshness in the mid-range at all, it's quite a smooth sound. There's less detail in it than on the old. There's less detail in it than a neutral or bright sounding speaker, but you're getting the comfort, like I say, and all that kind of stuff. Drums and bass can, depending, like I say, because it's got that kind of bass to that bottom end, so it can sound a bit muffled and muddy at times. So it can do. I'm not saying it's going to, but it can do. Obviously, speaker placement, and depending what amplifier, receiver, and other bits in the in your setup you've got attached to it, it can kind of lead that way. So that would be like I say, this is more of a comfort speaker. It sounds nice. People do like that kind of, like they can feel the bass, so to speak, that kind of like rounded off bass, richness bass kind of thing. And it kind of makes you feel like you're indoors, snuggling up on the sofa, listening to something, and it sounds all nice and warm and cosy kind of thing. So that maybe, hopefully describes a warm sounding speaker. So now we're going to go on to a bright sounding speaker. Okay, well now we're going to talk about a bright sounding speaker. Then this would be an opposite to a warm sounding speaker, really. You may think a bright sounding speaker is probably opposite to a dull maybe, but it's opposite to a warm. This is how they seem to clarify this speaker. With a bright sounding speaker, obviously the frequency, the emphasis is more towards the top end, and the bottom end could be like, what would you call it? It's not much bottom end to it, not much bass to it maybe, depending, the bass would feel a bit light. The treble would be slightly forward and ahead of the other frequencies, so to speak, to make it, this bright sound. These bright speakers can sound a bit harsh at times, they can sound a bit harsh because, depending how bright they are. The snare drum and vocals can seem a bit higher pitched. You can get a little bit more higher pitched than snare, and I've noticed that, the snare drum can sound a little bit different to how you'd normally, think a snare drum would sound. It could sound a bit like a fireworky. It's a kind of, sound like a few fireworks are going off, like, these Chinese kind of fireworks. It kind of gives that sound to it, I've noticed, rather than the actual, the snare sound. The bass is rolled off. Like I say, there's a lack of bass there to what you'll get with a warm sounding speaker. Definitely, you're definitely going to tell the big difference between a warm and bright speaker. There's going to be a massive difference where like the neutral one kind of fits in between. And poorly mastered recordings can sound irritating, because it's got this little bit of harshness to it, and you've got a bad sounding recording as well that can multiply kind of thing, and it can sound irritating and kind of horrible at times. So just something to bear in mind, to have a really good quality recording going into a bright speaker, obviously depending how bright it is. But with this, you kind of got some benefits here, especially cymbals and stuff like that. They're going to sound nice, they're going to sound splashy, they're going to sound like, so you can actually, you can probably feel every, that brush, every hair of that brush riding the ride cymbal or the hi-hat or whatever. You're going to feel, you're going to really hear that kind of thing. So, that's a bright sounding speaker. You're going to, you're sacrificing the bass and they're pumping up the treble, so to speak. And like I say, it can interfere with the vocals a bit. Snare drum, them kind of frequencies can sound just a little, a little pitched up a little bit higher than you probably would, come accustomed to, so to speak. So that's a bright sounding speaker. Now I'm going to go on to how these would interfere with each other. If you've got a bright amp and a bright speaker, how to maybe try and match them up, or maybe not to match them up. Okay, I'm going to have a quick talk about matching speakers with amplifiers. Maybe not a great idea, so to speak, is putting a bright set of speakers with a bright amplifier, and it's obviously you can extend that brightness. And we know whether the top is already like top heavy, so to speak, frequency wise, it's going to go even further, and maybe a bit unbearable, a bit too much, and you're going to lose the bottom end, and it's going to sound really thin and no weight to the bass at all. So, if you're going to get a bright set of speakers, on the whole, it's maybe best to stick to a neutral sounding amplifier. And if you're going to get a warm sounding set of speakers, maybe stick to a neutral sounding amplifier as well. Though you can kind of get a warmish amp, but you will hear that in the bass. That become more rounded, so to speak, more prominent, and maybe just a bit too much, a bit muddling, and a bit muffled or baffled, or whatever you want to call the word. So if you're going to go for that, I would say, if you're going to go for a warmer set of speakers, try and stick to a neutral sounding amplifier. But if you've got a warm amplifier and it's you're going to get a neutral set of speakers, you may want to. It's up to you. You may want to venture into the bright. You may want to try and brighten that amplifier up a bit, and get a bright set of speakers. So there's a few combinations there, but what I wouldn't do is get warm to warm. Maybe I'm not saying don't, and bright to bright. They're the two maybe to stay clear of a little bit. Obviously you can do some adjustments. So if I give you kind of an example, you've got a neutral sounding amplifier and you've got like a neutral set of speakers, and you want to try and make them warm. Only going by my experience is that you can edit in that direction, obviously by bringing in the bass a bit, or moving the graphic equalizer at the lower end, and cutting off the maybe cutting off a bit of the treble if you want, or just leave the treble where it is at the end of the higher frequencies. You kind of edit in that direction, but you're never going to get. You're still going to be like, if you've got 10 steps to say, to this, this is a neutral sounding speaker, and you wanted to make it into a warm sounding speaker, and the warm sounding speaker's up here. You're going to get up a bit. You're going to go heading towards its direction, but you're never going to get to that place. I haven't been able to manage it. It's just that speaker's got its own kind of characteristics. A warm sounding speaker, and it's hard to make a neutral sounding speaker into as that speaker would sound. You'll get you'll get towards it, but I don't think you're ever going to make it exactly how the other one is. So maybe just something to bear in mind there. If you really was after that warm sound, and it seems a lot of people are. A lot of manufacturers these days kind of go for that warm sound, that comfort feeling. Is to get a warm set of speakers, or a neutral set of speakers with a warm sounding amplifier, something like that kind of mixture, get you over in that direction. And like I say, you can always twiddle it a little bit, but you won't be miles off to start off with, as maybe you would with a neutral speaker, trying to get that into a warm sounding speaker. I hopefully kind of get me an idea there. What I'm saying is, obviously all these sounds, this warm, neutral, and this bright sound, this bright sound, it's all to do with how the manufacturer manufactured their speaker, the wood they're using, the size of the cabinet, the drivers, the crossover, all that kind of thing. These drivers have got their own sweet spots, so to speak, and frequencies. They're good at some, and not so quite as good as others. The size of the cone, how it moves, and all that kind of thing, how it's actually made up, etc. So something just to bear in mind. So hopefully, like I say, there is quite a few other terms for HiFi units, separates or whatever, speakers, all that kind of thing, all different kind of wording and whatever. But these seem to be the most commonly used. And I thought I'd just do a quick video, maybe on my faults, and maybe you want to leave a comment in the bottom of how you like your setup, what kind of how you tend to edge your sound. What would you prefer? And it'd be interesting to read. There's no right and wrong here. There's no right and wrong, and I've got systems here now that produce speakers and that produce all three, neutral, bright, and warm, and I enjoy listening to all of them. I wouldn't say that I couldn't listen to that. I can quite easily put it on for a few hours, have a listen, and I haven't really got a preference, really, to be honest with you. I can kind of like all three of them. I can get enjoyment out of all three of them, and if you're lucky enough to maybe to get two different sets of speakers for your system, it's a good idea maybe to alternate that round a few ways. So you listen to your records, your CDs, etc., like for a few weeks or months, listening to it with one kind of like a neutral sound maybe, and then you can whip out the speakers, and obviously still got your same amplifier and turntable, etc., and put a warm set of speakers on there, and you can listen to it, and you're going to get a different kind of sound, a different kind of feeling, a different kind of atmosphere to it, kind of thing, I would say. And you know, it's going to be, you know, a change as good as the rest, as they say. Like, you with me? So there you go. You know, you could well enjoy that for, you know, for a cheap set of speakers. You could probably pick up on eBay just to alter your sound a little bit in your system. Okay, I hope that's been some kind of like help to some people maybe looking out there for speakers and that, and trying to decide which ones they like, and the terminology, etc. Until the next video, I'll say thanks for watching, and I'll see you all soon.